You have found Authentic Business Adventures, business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. Downloadable audio episodes can be found in the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. I already told you that, so we'll just keep rolling here. Today, we're welcoming / preparing to learn from Camilla Zalstrom, co-founder of Zalstrom. So, Camilla, how about you tell us, what is Zalstrom?
Sure. Yeah. So we are a newly founded SEO agency. So I'm located in Europe, but my co-founder is in New York in the US. So we're kind of like based both in the US and in Europe, and our clients are too. We mainly work with B2B software companies, as well as service-based businesses. So like we have a dual sort of audience there. And yeah, so we just founded like in August this year, so a couple of months ago, and going strong.
Wow. All right. So
Yeah,
how did you end up with someone from New York? You're in Germany. Like, how did you guys connect?
exactly. Yeah. So it's a funny story. So I'm originally from Finland and she's from the US, right? But we've been working together. Like she was my client. I was a freelancer and consultant before this, like within SEO, right? And marketing. So she was a client and she has, her own businesses basically, and she's very well established. And so we ultimately, like, we decided to just, combine our powers and start our agency together.
All right. Very cool. So
Yeah.
so she was a client of yours. Which one of you brought up the idea to start a business together?
It was really her. And I mean, so she's quite well known in her niche and in her industry, right? So it was like I was very like flattered by that, right? And like didn't see it coming, but it was very cool because I do feel like we can do a lot together. But it was really her, like it wasn't my idea, but I was immediately like jumped on board, so to
All
speak.
right. And were you on your own? Like, did you have a business where you were doing work solo?
Exactly. Yeah. So I was doing work solo mainly. I had a few freelancers like I outsourced to, but it was really like a freelancing / consulting business, so a solopreneurship, if you will.
Got it. All right. So
Yeah.
bringing on a business partner can be tough. So you must have known her for a little while to make sure that
Yeah,
everything was
it
cool in
helped.
that regard.
Exactly. It helped that we had been working together for a few years already, that we really knew each other and how we work and everything. So that like really helps.
Gotcha. All right. So how do you market your business? Because essentially your business is helping other businesses market. So it's always interesting to talk to marketing companies. They're
Yeah,
like, well, how do you market your business? So what has worked for you
exactly.
guys?
Exactly. So, well, as said, we just started like a few months ago. And the idea is to start also using SEO and content marketing for our own business, like in January, February next year. However, like it's obviously a long-term game. So for us right now, like it made more sense to, well, A, continue working with the clients I had from before, and B, so we did like have clients from day one. And then B, cold pitching, like pitching companies is also a strategy we're using just because there are more shorter term strategies, but we're definitely going to use our own strategies to build our company as well.
Gotcha. So how long have you been in the B2B marketing space?
Yeah, it's been like 6 years
All
or
right.
almost. Yeah, I've been like, well, I was freelancing first as a content writer. And then I kind of from there, I established my niche as, B2B software businesses and service-based businesses. So they can also be like consultants or coaches and people or businesses like that. But it's really been like almost 6 years now.
All
So
right.
a while.
So what made you choose those specific businesses for your target?
Well, mainly because that was like the niche I was in, but like originally it just happened that I kind of started working with a software business. And through that, like I really found it interesting, like the whole business model. And it's interesting from an SEO perspective, just like how you build SEO for those companies. And it's really like through that sort of avenue that came into contact with software businesses. And then after I started working with a few service-based businesses, I kind of added that on as well, like as a target audience.
Gotcha. All right. So SEO seems to be somewhat of a moving target because I guess when I was dinking around with websites in I would say way late 90s, early 2000s, it was a way different game than it is now.
Absolutely.
I haven't even
Yeah.
kept up with
Totally
this game, but I
different.
just know, like, as it seems like as the rules come out from the search engines, the players come out to try to manipulate those rules, and then it just things change, and it leaves, I guess, from my point of view, I feel like the search engines have a little bit of a hard time because
Mhm.
you have the people that are very good at manipulating the
Yeah.
SEO, the rules of the game that aren't necessarily published, but can be
Yeah.
figured out more or less.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get better at that, and businesses, just a typical mom and pop business, they're almost left in the dust because they may not have. I mean, one, they may not even have the awareness that SEO is a thing. If they have a website, and then beyond that, if they do have a website, they do know SEO is a thing. It's just one of those like, oh my gosh, I got to constantly keep up with that on top of doing my day-to-day business, employees, selling, all that kind of stuff. So tell me, where do you find, I guess, where do you find businesses typically hanging out? And what would you recommend businesses do to improve their
Mhm.
SEO? Shy of just throwing you a
Yeah.
bag of money or two, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, you're totally right that for small businesses, like it is a problem because, well, SEO takes time to learn and to implement, and you do like, yeah, you do have to usually have like, if you want to really scale, you have to have a team. That said, though, like for if we're talking about really small businesses like mom and pop and so forth, um, then there are definitely strategies they can use as well. However, like what you're saying about awareness and there not maybe being awareness, that's true. And that's also why I love sort of coming on air, just talking about SEO and educating people a bit more, because it is such a like profitable channel for many businesses. But like jumping back to what small businesses can do, they're definitely like, so SEO has definitely evolved, but like the basis is always the same. And that's, that Google, which is the biggest search engine, wants you to deliver like good content to its users. So searchers on Google, right? And so basically what these small businesses can do is like write content and publish content consistently on their blog. And it doesn't have to be like a huge undertaking if they're doing other marketing as well. Like let's say a small business has a YouTube channel where they post like YouTube videos. They could take that YouTube video and kind of repurpose it. I mean, they can't just publish the YouTube video and call it a day. They do need to like include some text as well, but still, like that's a very easy way to get started. Like you don't have to, I think it's a huge misconception that you need to be very technical to get any benefit from SEO. Like, yeah, sure, you can't maybe scale to the size of Facebook or something, but like you can still get clients through SEO by just, publishing content on your website, basically.
Sure. Well, I look at a website like Craigslist, and I'm like, well, a lot of people know about Craigslist, but I don't know if they're really doing a whole lot of SEO. So a
Yeah.
business or a website like Facebook, I don't know if they have to do a whole lot with SEO.
No, they're so big, they don't have to,
So much
basically,
traffic already.
usually. Yeah,
So, I mean,
exactly.
the Amazons of the world. But on the flip side, I guess, Amazon's, when you look for something online, you can tell that Amazon's throwing a fair amount of money at advertising so that
Yeah,
they continue to show up.
yeah.
So let's talk about the advertising. I mean, just paying the search engines for you to get on their first page or towards the
Mhm.
top of the list versus sticking money and time into SEO. Have you seen pros, cons, benefits either way?
Yeah, exactly. So ads are basically a whole different animal, if you will. Like they have different strategies than what we call organic SEO. So what I do, meaning, ranking organically on Google. But paid ads, those are like they definitely like, yeah, I said they have different strategies. So I don't actively work with paid ads at this point. Like we might add that on at a later stage, but right now, like we focus mainly on organic SEO. But paid ads definitely have like their time and place. I would recommend like most businesses to, so paid ads can come in kind of sooner when you start scaling and just want to grow your business versus SEO comes in a bit later because it like requires more, energy and effort to build that up. But both, I think, have a place in most businesses like strategies. So they can be used, together as well. And especially paid ads work well for, keywords that are have very high buying intent. So when people are searching for something where they're really looking to buy something, like a classic example is, best running shoes. That's maybe where paid ads can really work well as well, in addition then to organic SEO, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like any other business owner. I get inundated with emails all the time that's like first page of Google, click this link kind of thing. And it
Yeah.
seems like all these promises. Can
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
tell us, if I were to start a business brand new from scratch today, and I were to just hire you or implement the best SEO strategies in the world, how long would it take for me to actually start getting found from
Yeah, that's
the typical customers that I'd be after?
exactly. That's an excellent question. And as many times in marketing, it depends on your industry and your website and so forth. But usually what I see is that it takes, like if you have a brand new website, like no work done on that website, then it will take a bit longer, like about 6 months or so to really like seeing a difference. But again, like that depends. Maybe you're in an industry that's a bit easier, and then it can be faster, and vice versa. And then if you have a website that's a bit more established, maybe you already have a blog, like you've already created some content and such, then it'll be faster. Then we've had clients who made like a return on investment just in a few months. So it totally depends on like the website and industry and strategies and so forth.
Gotcha. Interesting. So if I were to start, let's just say a hypothetical. I want to work this hypotheticals because I have a very hard time with just wrapping my head around the whole SEO thing.
Yeah.
I've had companies come to me and say like, "Hey, pay us a nut every month, and we'll make sure your SEO strategy is
Yeah.
taken care of." And I'm like, "What does that mean, taken care of? Because does that mean that
Mhm.
you're producing content for me, or are you adding alt tags to pictures? Like, what does that mean?" So can you just walk me through? Let's just say I have James's Pizza Emporium.
Ugh.
I don't know, some
Yeah.
local, maybe delivery in a given, I don't know, 10-mile radius or something like that. And I'm like, hey, I just started my website. So far, it's got a homepage with a smiling picture of me and a pizza or something like that. Tell me, like, where would you typically start with a client in that realm? So super local, fairly as niche as pizza is. I don't know, everybody likes pizza, right? But
Exactly.
something
Yeah.
in that world, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of, if it's a local business, like a pizza business, for example, or a restaurant, then what you want to start with, or sort of the lowest hanging fruit, is of course local SEO. So you want to get, because you're a local business, you want to get local people to find your business, or visiting people. But anyway, like people who are in your area. And that's where we like, it's called local SEO, meaning you optimize your website specifically to rank in your area, right?
Mm.
And so there are different ways you can do this, but just like to give you a few, there are different strategies. But where I would start is, first of all, make sure that your pages are optimized for Google, and that means implementing keywords, especially around pizza, around the area you're located in. So just as an example, if that pizza restaurant is in New York City, then you'd want to mention that a few times throughout your pages. Also, like on your contact page, like you just want to make sure that Google understands you're located in this area. And then, you can do a lot to optimize your Google like search result listing, the listing that comes up when you search for something. And there, you can do a lot to optimize, images, stuff like that. And also ask customers to leave reviews, because reviews are a huge sort of factor that Google takes into account when it ranks something locally. So those are just a few things. Then like going even further, like the next step would be to reach out to maybe some media in your some newspapers, media, different businesses, organizations in your industry, or sorry, area, and get links. So they give a backlink to your website from their website, because those links show Google that they trust your business, and that helps you rank on Google. And especially if those websites are local, it gives even more of a boost to your website. And Google sees that like even more favorably, basically.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
So
there are
one
a
of the
lot
things I
strategies.
want to ask you about this, just as kind of just things that I've discovered. We created a forum recently on one of my business web pages, and I don't even know if it was a day, maybe two, before a bot came and filled out some spam thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Russian brides or whatever. I don't know, it's just
Yeah.
something. I'm like, how in the world did a bot find that fast when I'm pretty sure a human, besides the person that programmed it, hasn't seen it yet? So how, like, there's no link to it outside, I guess not even on our webpage, there's not even a link to it. So how do bots find just all the web pages deep down in
Yeah.
the caverns beyond the homepage of all these websites?
Yeah, it depends on the bots, of course, and like how they find your website. But there are bots that, sort of simulate search. So basically, when your website ranks on Google, it's Google's bots, but they're not spammy bots, right? They're just Google's bots, like they're called spiders that crawl your website. And just to understand your website. And so they're able to rank your website. And basically, what these spammy bots are doing instead is just like simulating those bots, and that way like finding your website. They can also do this in other ways, but that's just like an example of how they would do it. And I agree, like they're super annoying.
It was surreal because it
Yeah.
was so fast.
Yeah. And it's so like typical, that if you have a blog and you have a comment field, like, the spam will just be so massive, like in the back end,
Mm-hmm.
basically. So it's a problem, I think, but not
Yeah.
much you can do about it. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it was funny because I'm like, who? I mean, I don't know if the person or people that put this together, if their intention, if they make money off this somehow, if there must be somebody clicking on that, like, hey, I
Yeah.
totally want a Russian bride or something like that.
Exactly.
Or
Yeah. Yeah.
is it
Or
just
something else.
a stepping stone? Like, hey, let's just try to attempt to hack into this website and then
Yeah.
we'll
I
work
mean,
on breaking into Fort Knox later or something like that.
exactly. I mean, they're both. So yeah, it's always a mystery, how they can make money, but I guess they do since there are so many of them.
How about you tell us about the name Zalstrom? How did you guys come up with that?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's basically a combination of my name, which is of Zalstrom, and then my business partner's name, which is Sue. So basically, yeah, it's a combination of like our both names, and we just thought it was like a funny way to name our company and kind of leave our mark on it, if you will.
Nice. You say your
Yeah.
name is Zoo or Sue?
So it's pronounced Joe, but it's written like Zhou. My
Oh,
business
wow. Okay.
partner's name. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me the size of businesses that you guys typically work with or that you target. Just tell us about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, the types of businesses we work with right now are mainly sort of mid-sized software businesses, and then also like service businesses with a few employees. So they're all kind of like mid-sized businesses. Like our goal is to also expand to bigger businesses, but right now that's kind of our niche.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And mid-sized business, how many employees are we talking?
It
Mid-sized means a lot of
depends.
different things to different people. So.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it depends. Of course, like they could be, let's say five, two, then like 40. So it's like the whole spectrum.
Gotcha. All right. So let's go do another exercise like what we did with the local thing with the
Yeah.
software company. Because software, I mean, they're not
Yeah.
necessarily local as far as who they're looking for clients. They
No.
may be looking all over the country or world, maybe for what they're
Yeah.
offering. So how do you tackle that? They call you up and they're like, hey, Camilla, I got this sweet software. I got a homepage on the website. What now with SEO? I want to get found.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, as you say, like they have a different approach because they're not local, right? So they want to be found everywhere or like in specific markets, but still like probably globally and or on a bigger scale than locally. And so here the approach is, I mean, still we want to, you know, create content for them. Like that's always the basis sort of SEO. So we want to, you know, create both, look at their pages, like their, you know, the product pages, as well as their overall website to make sure that it's optimized for Google. Then we want to, you know, start creating content, set up like a content plan where we produce blog posts for them every month. And the third one is then again, this backlink building, but like on a global scale. So there you go to like, you know, general media or other, you know, websites to get those backlinks back to their website. And of course, all of this happens like on like a bigger scale than if you have a small like pizza joint somewhere in a small city. Like it just happens on a bigger scale so that we can, you know, grow and scale that business as fast as possible.
Gotcha. Interesting. So I've talked to a lot of business owners. I've ended up selling some of my businesses. And I talked to a lot of business owners that have sold, bought, all that jazz.
Yeah.
And one of the things, especially for a small company where you're not necessarily a McDonald's or some huge, you know, Nike name or something like that, I always think, how much would it cost starting from zero to build brand recognition for any brand in comparison to just buying a given business that's already in existence?
Mm-hmm.
So from I guess when you are talking to a company to figure out, hey, what is a practical number for you guys to spend in, let's just talk percentage of revenue without talking actual dollars, are we talking like 5%, 20%, 50% of revenue, or what's a typically practical number or number,
yeah.
practical percentage in
to
regards to
spend
that,
on
what a business can expect?
to spend on SEO or yeah, exactly. Okay, then I got you. Yeah, so basically we don't work with like percentages of revenue. It's more a flat fee. Of course, that means that the business does have to have some type of revenue, right, to be able to afford those services. But I mean, now our services are, you know, for these mid-sized companies. So obviously, like that's a certain, you know, price range. But then also you have like other SEO agencies who are catering to smaller businesses, for example, and that's a different price range. So it totally depends. But as I said, we don't base our fees on like revenue, like a percentage of revenue, but rather like a flat fee, which includes like all these services. And then of course, like as we move forward with the business and like their, you know, traffic and business grows, then we sort of, once we're at a certain level, we then like increase the rate so that we can do even more to like scale faster, add more sort of services into the mix or do more. And yeah, that's kind of how our pricing model looks like.
Gotcha. So are you, when it comes to SEO, I feel you talked a lot about content, blogs, videos, all that jazz, super cool. I imagine you have the people that are like, hey, I'm in some super niche business, whatever. I don't know, maybe it's software for accountants that only work on Tuesdays or something.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly.
We only round to the second decimal. Whatever it is. And they're like, how are you going to write a blog or enter information on my website that has any value when you're not an accountant, you don't work only on Tuesdays or something of that nature? How do you respond to something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, obviously, like if you're that niched, you know, and you only work with accountants like who work on Tuesdays, then like that's your audience, and that audience has a certain cap, right? Where how much you can make as a business, like working with them. As an agency, what we would do, like if you decide to just stick to this very, very small niche, is that, you know, we help you rank for those keywords in that, you know, section or sector and industry. But of course, like then to really expand, you might also have to add on more, you know, other types of products or, you know, broaden the audience ultimately. But it's definitely not a problem to like start in a very like small niche, because there are usually like keywords that cater to that niche. Like they're also looking for information on Google, but it's more like the problem comes in if you decide to stick to that niche and you want to scale. Like that kind of doesn't, go hand in hand, if you will.
Sure.
Like any, it's not just a problem with SEO, right? But like overall business.
Fair. Totally. Yeah, that was probably a bad example. I guess what I want to ask. Typical, I'm just thinking of the softwares that I've looked at have been pretty niche commonly.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times with software, customers may not even know that that software exists to look for it.
Yeah,
I guess if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, exactly. That makes total sense. And I mean, your previous question as well, because it is like a, concern for many, like, can I even use SEO? Because I mean, such a small niche. But of course, like if it's a software product or any product where the customer doesn't really know their need or, their want for that product, then what we do is look at, related industries or like related sort of, because they're all like, if you have a product that you sell, then there's a problem to be solved, right? For your customer. And so what we would look at is, or tackle it instead from the problem angle. So what are customers sort of searching for when they're thinking about their problem, like whatever that may be? They're probably, like, some of them are going into Google or another search engine and just looking for a solution to their problem. And that's then how, if you with your niche software business rank for those keywords, then that's kind of how you get customers. Of course, it's not as straightforward as if I'm searching for like pizza restaurant in New York City, and I go to like the nearest pizza restaurant, like that's a very fast conversion.
Mm-hmm.
But here, like we have to tackle the customer journey a bit like from a broader angle.
Sure. All right. Tell me, I mean, you mentioned Google, biggest search engine, but you've also got the others.
Yeah.
Even in Europe, maybe there's some that I don't even know about. So how do you play the game with all the different search engines? They're changing rules. And I imagine sometimes their rules maybe opposed to each other.
Yeah, no, actually, most of them work like in the same way, because all of the search engines have the same goal of like ranking the best content or the best information, if you will. Like it doesn't have to be blog content. It can also be, YouTube videos or videos in general or images or whatever that might be. But like their goal is to rank the best ones from a user perspective. And so they all kind of had the same goal. And of course, Google being like one of the first bigger search engines, like they've kind of, and the biggest today, like they've set the rules for, how algorithms work and so forth. So most of these other search engines are trying to like emulate what Google is doing. Then of course you have a few search engines where like their selling point is privacy. Like we protect your privacy, and that's like our selling point. But they're like still like the search algorithm works in the same way. It might just be that from a privacy perspective, like you might have a harder time, for example, ranking in certain searches, or it might be harder to rank locally because it's harder to like track where people are and so forth.
Got it. All right. Yeah. I think of something like, is it DuckDuckGo?
Yeah, that's one. And then there are a few like newer ones as well. Like there are some of those search engines that really look at privacy. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I saw a billboard for them. I don't know, a little while ago. It's interesting because that's,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, trying to beat Google at that game is tough
yeah.
game.
It's
Tough
a
game.
tough
All the
game
power
for
to
sure.
them. Hope they do
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
So with your business, is the idea that you'll scale, or are you guys going to stay the two of you? I guess what, from a business standpoint for you guys, what's the plan moving forward? Short term.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically right now we do have like a pool of freelancers we work with. But so like right now that's the situation, or like what our business looks like. But moving forward, we're definitely going to build a team and also scale quite, or like our goal is to scale quite fast, especially given that, we already have like an existing pool of clients like from before, and quite a lot of like business experience. So so that's kind of the goal, to not stay like just the two of us, but rather scale rather fast.
Well, I get it. I can see either way because I have employees, and there are days that it's super awesome, and there are days when you're like, you know what, I kind of get the whole one person at a band
Yeah,
kind of thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
And I did that for, a number of years, like being a freelancer and consultant, but now I just feel it's time, for something bigger.
gotcha, totally fair. Now I want
Yeah.
to talk to you about working with your partners across the ocean. So
Mhm.
is that challenging? I mean, you got time difference. You're not in the same office. I mean, that's kind of the world that we live in now with a lot of businesses. So has that been a challenge communicating or keeping in touch or just keeping in the loop? Or how have you guys worked through that?
Yeah, surprisingly, it hasn't. Like, I would have thought the same, that it would be challenging, but I think like with just straightforward communication, it's quite easy. Also, like, my co-founder being in the US and me being in Europe, like there's still some overlap in terms of hours, like where it's, my business hours and her business hours. So it's fairly easy to set up calls and such. And then of course the rest is, through email communication, but it's really not, I think like it comes down to sort of establishing the goals from the start. Like what are your expectations, what are my expectations, and what are our goals, and then clear sort of roles within the business. And that really helps. Like, this is my area, and if I need some information or input, I'll just shoot an email, and then like we have regular calls where we then like look at things in a more sort of broader strategic level. So yeah,
One of
so
the
that's
things,
basic. Yeah.
there's a little construction going on here. It's all
Oh
good.
yeah.
So I apologize for that.
No worries.
One of the things that we have with my calls on call business is everyone's remote, they're doing well, but I feel like there's just some of the camaraderie or a little bit of the culture that you would have in an in-person office is lost, or it's not as easy to maintain. Because before you just walk in the door, people be there, be like, hey, good morning, how's it going? Oh, I just had, I ran over a dog on my way in or whatever, something like that. Where
Hopefully not,
now,
but yeah.
yeah, hopefully not. But now we have instant messaging set up, but it's a lot of, it's, it's business strictly. So
Yeah.
I don't want to say strictly necessarily, but you're just not telling about your day. Maybe one, because you're not driving anywhere. So you're not running over a whole lot of dogs, but it's one of those, you know what I mean? Where it's just,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
don't want to pollute the instant messaging channel with, let me tell you about stuff that's not necessarily relevant to the business, but you also have to maintain humanity
Yeah,
and enjoy the people that you work with and keep the culture happy,
absolutely.
positive, all that jazz. So how do you guys take care of that? Because that's got to be especially tough with just two people.
Yeah, well, I imagine like it'll be tough also, like when we have because now we work with freelancers, so obviously that's very project based. But like, with employees and a team, like I can imagine that being very like challenging. Like, how do you create that culture? But I think for us, like it works because we also have like our own like projects, going on. So it's not really basically, yeah, for us, it's not like a problem where we would need to really chit chat a lot during the day. Like I guess we have the different avenues to get like an outlet for that, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Yeah.
But I can, yeah, said I can totally imagine it being, a problem with employees, because then you really have to make sure, yeah, for retention and things like that. Like you
Hmm.
really have to make sure that people are happy and enjoying like the work environment.
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance because
Yeah.
even on instant messaging, I try to have fun every once in a while, and I ended up making an employee mad,
Oh
not
no.
intentionally, but I put a little smash in the forehead icon thing when
Yeah.
somebody made a joke about a mistake.
Yeah. That's the hard thing, right?
I
About
hurt
like
somebody's feelings. I didn't
messaging.
mean to.
Yeah, like in text format, it's just so much easier to like get,
Yeah,
or
whatever. Life
get
goes
that
on.
miscommunication. Yeah.
They're gone, so it's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, just talking to business owners about the whole remote work experience and what they found works
Absolutely.
is always interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like for me personally, what I like to do is, not just work from home, but like take that time during the day and like see other people and like just go, to maybe that's a co-working space or an outside office or something like that. like me being, totally remote, like from my clients and from my business partner and so forth. So that's kind of how I handled that, is to instead like find those other ways to like, just get that human contact in the day.
Human.
Yeah.
Tell
Not
me
just
about your
computers.
freelancers, because that's got to be tough to find. I imagine just like
Yeah.
it's tough to find good employees, it's probably tough to find
Yeah.
good freelancers, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Don't
think I like that.
necessarily come out and
So,
say that they're the worst at what their job is. They always
yeah.
probably want to
Yeah.
say they're the best. So
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
how do you vet
Exactly.
them? How do you find them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess like it's one of the biggest problems for most business owners is that to like find, the right employees or team members, freelancers. So the way I handle this is I work with the same freelancers. So like when I find a good freelancer, like I really work with them and I make sure to, work with them, sort of give them a good amount of work as well. So they're incentivized to work with me. And like, so they're kind of covered a bit in that sense. But of course, to find them, like it's really just about searching and finding, right? So like I'll find some of my freelancers on like Upwork, which is this freelancing platform. And then of course there are different ones, but like Upwork works for me. And there I just basically, it's a manual thing, where you go to Upwork and you're like searching for the right profiles and then reaching out and, doing this a lot to find like the right people, and then, testing them to see if it's the right fit, like both from a skill level, but also from a just like working with them. And yeah, so that's basically how I do it. And it works well for me. Of course, it is time consuming. Like I
Sure,
think any hiring is time consuming.
sure.
So yeah.
Let's talk about how you ended up in the SEO world. Can you tell us how you
Yeah.
stumbled into that?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I got started, like I said, about 6 years ago, but then I was doing content writing. And that's really how I then, just got involved, because content writing has a lot to do with SEO. And I kind of saw an opportunity to stand out as a content writer with the help of like SEO and like learning more about SEO. And that's really how I started getting some results from my clients, like unintentionally basically. And then like I started learning more about SEO and like how that works and how I can, sort of implement that into my content. And, fast forward a few years, I was taking care of more and more SEO tasks, and ultimately then like entire projects and like building the, traffic for entire websites basically. And yeah, here we are today, like moving it into an agency setting.
Sure.
So
So was the intention 6 years ago? Like 6 years ago, did you have a day job essentially doing content writing?
no, I had like quit my day job to try out freelancing, and then
Okay.
that kind of led the way to me just starting consulting as well, and so forth. But it wasn't like the goal wasn't to, at that time it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start an agency. It was more like I want to be a business owner, so like what skills do I have? And then writing was the first one, and then from that I grew it to SEO and so forth.
Gotcha. So you didn't necessarily, so when you had your day job, was the idea like, hey, screw this job, I'm going to start my own business? Or was the consulting on content writing essentially, this is a stepping stone or a holding pattern until I find my next day job, whatever that may be?
Yeah, no, it wasn't like I needed to find a new day job. It was more like I want to have I want that flexibility and freedom of being a business owner. And, I found it to be more creative than being in a day job, like just that that you kind of decide on everything, which, has its pros and cons, but still like I find that more freeing for me and more sort of creative. And so that was really like what I was looking for. And I couldn't find that in a day job. And yeah, that's really why I started my business and like didn't look back, because I've always felt like this is the right lifestyle for me. I don't know, like,
It's
yeah.
interesting that you use the word stability along with freedom, because typically I feel like people with day jobs presume that their job is stable and they're sacrificing some freedom in exchange for that stability. But I
Yeah,
find
yeah,
it's interesting because that's not necessarily the case, or rarely the
exactly.
case.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, as we see now with all these layoffs, right? That like they're speaking about in the media, like not only Twitter, but also like Meta and so forth. And like this whole recession and so forth, the recession we're probably going into, that just shows like no job is secure, right? Like there's no
Right.
stability really.
Yeah, people
And
have been shaken up a little bit. So I know for the past, oh man, 4 or 5 years, it seems to have been an employee market rather than an
yeah,
employer market.
exactly.
And I'm kind of hoping that that tide is changing or shifting a little bit. Not necessarily because I wish bad upon people or anything like that, but I feel like a lot of people gotten lazy from my perspective. So I don't know where you're at with that, but if you
Yeah,
see that.
I think maybe the bigger problem is just like balance, right? And just in general, like this just goes to show basically that there is no stability. Like it just
Right. Mm-hmm.
it's a good thing to keep in mind,
Right.
even though people are of course suffering through this as well. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just I'm reminded of that. I can't think of the exact quote from the GE CEO when they let go of a bunch of people. Jack Welch. Jack Welch let go of a bunch of people, and one of the guys complained. He's like, "Hey, I've been here 20 years. You're letting me go." And Jack Welch is like, "We're also hiring, but you got to keep your skill set up to the modern era. And if you're not constantly growing and constantly improving yourself as an employee for the job that you have and the job you want, etc., you can get outdated pretty quick."
Yeah, in this like day and age for sure, like
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're in any like digital space.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something most people need to sort of keep
Yeah.
track of. Yeah.
Tell me, I want to talk about some black hat SEO stuff that you should not do.
Yeah.
This reminds me of oh my gosh. I started my first business in 2006. So this is probably, let's just say 2006-ish. I built my website, and I had read somewhere online that people, the viewers of your website, only want to see so many words, but search engines want to see a lot more words to actually know what you're about. So I remember I put this laundry list of towns that we did business in, and then I made the list of those towns the same color as the background of the website, so that the a viewer wouldn't necessarily see it unless they selected all the text, but a search engine in theory would. Then I
Yeah.
learned later that they're like, no, don't do that, because that shows that you're trying to hide stuff from people, and search
Yeah.
engine will black flag you. And I'm like, oh, that was not my intention, but okay. And we're small enough website where it probably didn't matter either way. But can you tell us just about some practices that people may be implementing with presumably positive intentions that are not a good idea from the search engine
Yeah.
point of view?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's one, of course, but two like big ones come to my mind. And so maybe just to like back up or back a bit is that like black hat SEO are strategies that like are basically against Google's user guidelines. And so you shouldn't use them because your website might get like, basically your traffic can tank because Google like stops ranking your website. And some black hat sort of strategies that people might be using is one, first of all, paying for links. So Google
Oh,
actually says like you should not pay for links. Like this is in their guidelines, like very clearly. But and this is also a problem that a lot of SEOs, like people who work as SEOs, use paid links, and that's actually like not a good idea. Just because while it might work right now, you don't know, like in a few years, Google might go in and say, oh, paid links are such a huge problem that we need to crack down on this. And we're going to like implement this new algorithm update that's going to like, take care of this problem. And that means that if you have paid links, your traffic is gone, So it's just
mm-hmm.
not a very good way to grow your traffic, even though you might get some results right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing which I think people just like from not knowing any better are doing, you know. So that's one thing you definitely shouldn't do. And if you can pay for links, but then the website which links to your website needs to mark it as sponsored, as you know, that link is sponsored. So that's totally fine. But it does need to be linked. So, you know, on a website where you have like branded content, where like a business has clearly paid for that content, like that's totally fine. It's more like if you do it without any any highlight of that whatsoever. The second thing is reciprocal links. So like if you and I would like exchange links to our websites, like that's also a no-go. I mean, it's a few of those links are fine because it's like how websites usually work, right? Like that sometimes you just have like the same websites linking to each other. So that's fine. The problem is if all of your links are those types of links, like that's where it looks spammy to Google. And again, like your website might get affected from that.
Gotcha. All right. So yeah,
And of
the
course,
paid link thing. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I've had people reach out asking if I wanted to pay, and
for sure. Yeah. And it sounds like a good deal, right? Like why not make a bit
I
of
chalk it up
money?
to the whole Russian bride thing. I'm just like,
Yeah. Exactly. And it sounds, you know, it's like, well, I have this website, why not make a bit of money, like just from links? But it's not, you know, it's not a good idea unless you're, you know, actually saying that those are sponsored links.
Yeah, I
So,
guess I have had people reach out to me about other websites that I have asking to pay me
yeah.
for me to post their blogs on the website. And it's
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that's not really the realm of where I make my money. So
Yeah. So you haven't just done it.
pass
Yeah. Yeah,
the
exactly.
thing.
But some websites are. So yeah.
Oh, I'm certain. There's no doubt. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when you do a search on something and you end up on a web page where it's 50 gazillion ads. Like, oh, I
Yeah,
see
for
what's happening
sure.
here.
For sure. Yeah.
So where do you see SEO going in the next few years? I mean, it's tough to tell very far
Yeah.
ahead, but it's changed quite a bit in the past few years. So there's certain things that you're prepping some clients for or learning more about, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna speculate on what that could be. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, I feel, because also like there's so many new technologies right now that there's just so much possibility, right? And
Mhm.
of course, I can't say for sure. Well, first of all, what has always kind of been the same in terms of SEO and how SEO works is the user experience. So, you know, search engines like Google want to keep a good user experience for their users. So good content, you know, those kinds of things like authoritative websites. So those will probably keep the same, right? Because they still want to present the best content to their users. However, the way we search is changing. So for example, voice search is getting bigger
Oh,
and bigger. And you know, AI is taking more and more space. And then like younger people, like Gen Z and so forth, like they're searching more and more on TikTok, for example. So they're using TikTok a bit like we're using Instagram or Google or other, you know, platforms. And so we can definitely probably like in the future, Google will have to, you know, change some of the way it like presents search results just to like cater to those like changes in how consumers use
oh,
Google,
interesting.
basically. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it'll be exciting to see like where it goes. But like it's so hard to tell right now, right?
Yeah.
But like that, those are my kind of top areas where it's changing a lot.
All right. I heard somebody use the phrase or the term web 3.0. And I'm
Yeah,
like, what? I haven't heard that since the web 2.0 thing, social
yeah,
media. And I remember I had oh my gosh, there's this woman that I was paying for. I think I was paying her to build social media posts for one of my businesses.
yeah,
And she asked why I even have a website because I should just rely on Facebook. I'm like, and I think her game was for me just to pay her to
yeah,
build that. And I'm like,
yeah,
that seems like the dumbest thing in the world to put all of my eggs into a basket that I have less than zero control over.
exactly.
But she tried to talk me into, she's like, the web as we know it is going away. It's going to be exclusively Facebook in this. And of course, we know that's not the case. So it was
Yeah.
interesting, her perspective. And I'm not really sure if that was a sales pitch on her end or if she actually truly believed that.
Uh-huh.
I kind of hope it was a sales pitch because
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think that's, a good point to make, that like with your website, you are in control of like your audience, your traffic and so forth, versus like if you rely on a social media, like we are seeing now with Facebook or Meta these days, like how, it's getting less and less relevant. So if you've like built your whole business on that platform, like you need to move to other platforms, right? But then also in terms of like Web3 and those types of things, like I don't know that much about Web3, but like from what I know, it's kind of like maybe the internet will change, but like I don't think it's going to change fast enough for us not to be able then to like adjust,
Sure.
once that change comes, basically.
Fair, totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I can't even tell you what I read that was talking about Web 3.8 or that you use that phrase. And I can't even say that what was written there was compelling enough for me to be like, oh, I have to change everything I've known about the web. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think like there are different opinions on Web3 as well. Like, is it a thing even, or is it not,
It's just a marketing thing, like Y2K or something.
Yeah, exactly. So like there are different opinions, I think, on that, but it'll be of course interesting to see. But overall, like, as with business in general, I don't think you should like jump to the next shiny thing, but rather like keep your, existing, like what you have, and like build on what's working now, and then like look into the future, of course. But
right. Fair. I love it. So Camilla, you've been in business a little bit, you've been on your own for a while. What are some business advice that you give someone that was considering starting their own gig or just going off on their own, even as a consultant?
Yeah, well, I think like the biggest thing is like, if you're totally new to business, is to really focus like on what you're, focus on a few marketing channels, focus on, one service or one product or whatever that is. And, really like double down. And then like, once you see, of course, in the beginning, you might need to try a few things to see what's working, but like, once you see what's working, double down on that. So like, instead of being on, let's say, LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok and what's not, like, if you see a LinkedIn is working well, like that's where you should, sort of.
Oh, gotcha. So push.
Focus on. Yeah,
instead
exactly.
of just trying to spread it everywhere.
Exactly.
Really
like
what's working.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's like the biggest learning I've had from my sort of journey, and what I always try to remind myself even now, that it's at every stage, like you have to also focus, like you can't just spread yourself thin.
Cool. I love it. Well, Camilla, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate your time.
I thank you so much. This was really fun.
Tell me, I didn't even ask your website. You were on an SEO program. So how would you tell us your website?
Yeah, sure. So it's Zalstrom.com. So Zalstrom.com.
Perfect. I appreciate it. So Zalstrom.com, Zalstrom.
Yes.
Sweet.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land, even across the pond here. We're locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening or watching this on the web, if you could do us a huge favor, give it the big old thumbs up. And of course, subscribe. That's a big deal. The algorithm wants to know. And I guess most importantly, if you don't mind, throw some comments out there. Tell me what has worked for your SEO, what has not worked for your SEO, and just any questions that you may have for Camilla. Outside of that, my name is James Kateman, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering and receptionist services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com. And of course, the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur and all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Camilla Hellstrom, co-founder of Zalstrom. Can you tell us that website one more time?
Yes, it's Zalstrom.com.
Perfect. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night. Podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.